Hey everyone, it's Melody with Design by Melody, and I'm here for the Something Inspiration Team today. And my task for this month was to scrapbook something old. Now, that's just the prompt. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to scrapbook, an old photo or anything like that, but it's just to inspire you. So I took that prompt of something old and I pulled out some products that I thought may have been an older style. So I'm just kind of showing you here what I'm going to be using. We have ribbon, we have brads, I have an embossed paper, and then I also just pulled out a bunch of other things that I had in my stash. Now, not all of these products are older styles, but I was using the ribbon, the embossed paper, and the brads kind of as a jumping off point for this. I'm also using that punched border that was in that Memento pad. And I have this embossed paper that I'm going to be using primarily as my background, but I did go ahead and pull out a gray and white pattern paper from that same Memento pad, and I'm using that as the background for my embossed white paper. Now, both of those are from that paper pad, but what I've realized is that paper pad is an older line from Memento, and I went to their website and it's not even offered on there anymore. It does not have a date in the pad of paper, but I did look on their website to see if it was offered, and it's not. But I've also noticed that it's the thinner papers, which usually indicates that it may be an older style of paper. It doesn't always indicate that, but from what I've found, it just, for me, in my mind, it makes me think of like an older paper pad when it's got those thinner papers. Now, you could definitely still get paper pads with the thinner papers, but in my mind, that means that it's an older pad. So anyways, so I'm using that as my inspiration just to pull out some older styled products, older styles that I still use. I still use plenty of ribbon on my layouts, and I still use brads, and I still use, of course, the embossed papers. And you can actually see the embossing a little bit more when you're looking at that back of that white paper. It has a flower or a floral print on it, and one side is white and the other side is kind of a dark gray, I suppose you can say. It's not a black, but it's kind of a dark gray. And I'm using that as my my base for my layout. And you'll be able to see it as I turn it over here in a moment when I'm actually putting my ribbons down. I'm just using that scallop border as kind of a bottom part, and then I'm going to layer a couple different strips of ribbon. I have a solid pink, and then I have the same pink but with the very fine white polka dot on it. And I just kind of like the combination of the two together. Now, this photo is actually of my grandmother. My mom and her sisters went on a trip. They do this every couple years where they go on like a girls' trip, and I can't remember if they always take my grandmother or if I don't think they always take her, because they went to Vegas a couple years ago and she did not go. So you can see that embossing on the back of that paper. And you can see it when the paper is kind of turned a little bit, but when it's flat on my desk, you cannot actually see the embossing. And by the way, that paper came embossed. I did not emboss it. So anyways, back to the photo. So this is a photo of that trip that they went on, and they went somewhere north. Not Maine, but I do know that they went and had lobster and stuff like that. So, and it was cold. It was very, very cold when they went. But either way, I was just, I picked this picture of my grandmother and had actually taken it from one of my aunt's Facebook pages. So I have 3 aunts. My mom had 4 sisters, or has 4 sisters, I should say. And they went on a trip and they took my grandmother with them this time. So I chose this picture because I think it's just so cute of my grandmother. She's standing there in front of this tree and has all the cherry blossoms around her. So my title is actually going to be "In the Cherry Blossoms," and I believe that was the caption that my aunt had put on the photo, because that's what I had written down in my little notebook that I keep my scrapbooking plans in. I had written that down, so I'm pretty sure that was the caption that my aunt had put on that photo when she put it on her Facebook page. So I paused for just a moment and I actually went into my scrap bin and I went ahead and pulled out a couple different scraps. I had this, I believe it's a 6x8 paper that has white with some gray font on it, just write script on it. It just says things like enjoy, radiant, sparkle, free, beauty. Let's see, what else does it say? Love. Just has a whole bunch of words like that on it. So I use that kind of as a background just for my photo, like a large photo mat. And then I also pulled out this pink pattern paper to be a photo mat directly for the photo itself. And I feel like that's going to give the paper itself and the layout itself enough of a different color that it stands out, but it's also not just a solid background. I wanted the embossed paper to be one of the main focal points, but I did feel like the photo was getting lost. I felt like it needed a little bit of something, so that's why I pulled out those pattern papers to be kind of a large photo mat and just a simple photo mat. Now, I pulled out a lot of different die cuts I had, and I showed them all to you at the beginning. I keep my die cuts primarily sorted by manufacturer, and then I do have some that I have color sorted, but those are just some random ones that I have in my stash. But this one that I'm primarily using is my little die cut pack from Ellie Studio. I have about 3 or 4 boxes of Ellie Studio products that I just keep sorted, and I love them, so I use them all the time. Now, before I get too far into the embellishments here, I want to go ahead and put my title. Now, I know it's going to be this large glittered black font as the main part of my title, so I knew that it was going to take up a good amount of space. So first I'm going to put cherry blossoms, because I had not totally decided to make my title in the cherry blossoms, but I did know I wanted cherry blossoms. So I'm going ahead and put this down, and I'm using my T-square ruler to be able to line up my title here to make sure that it is straight. I have kind of a weird obsession with making sure things are straight. It does not have to always be straight, but when I'm laying a title down like this, I want it straight. And I needed to make sure that I glued down that 6x8 page first. Now I went ahead and rounded the corners of that. I felt like there were a lot of square corners going on with the mat, with the large background, the embossed paper, and then with the gray mat around it. And then of course with the photo corners as well. So that's why I rounded the corners on the 6x8 paper, and I felt like it really tied in well with the black scallop at the bottom. And that is also another reason why I settled on that large, thicker pack, because it was the bold black, which is the same thing that the scallop border is at the bottom. I had this die cut that said Good Times, and it's just a tag. So I'm using that to put in these. So it really says Good Times in the cherry blossoms, but my title is really in the cherry blossoms. It just fit well, and it was also that gray that I have a lot going on. The colors that I'm using here are gray, black, of course white, and then pink. And I have a couple of different variations of pink. And I love scrapbooking with pink products. I have a ton of them, but I don't necessarily like to do a lot of just plain pink layouts. I scrapbook my boys a lot, my husband and my son, and then we are always doing things together, so there's a lot of layouts that they're in, and I actually scrap probably the least of myself, so I don't have a lot of layouts that I use a ton of pink on, but I do like to tie that in whenever possible, and I do use it on my layouts with my boys. I'm really enjoying these prompts, so I'll probably be doing a couple different ones throughout the month. My next assignment is not until next month, but I'm thinking about going ahead and scrapbooking some of the different fonts, the different prompts from this month for the Something Inspiration Team, because I find it inspirational to really think about, obviously Inspiration Team, but I find it really inspirational to think about, okay, how can I take the prompt, something old, and really turn it into a scrapbook layout? Now, I could have pulled out some old vintage photos. That could have been one thing that I could have scrapped. I could have pulled out some really old products. Now, these products I feel like have an older style, but I don't think they're older products in a sense. I was just pulling out some of the things that may have been an older style. You could also take it and scrapbook a person who is maybe a little bit older. You could scrapbook something like photos of a house that you used to live in, which would have been your old house. It could have been anything like that. You can take that prompt and kind of interpret it any way you want. Right now, I'm just going through my pile of die cuts that I pulled out. And before I started the video, I had sat down on my floor when I was pulling products to use for this layout. I did not use a pre-made kit. I usually scrapbook with either a stash kit or with a kit that I have purchased. And I'm not scrapbooking with either of those. I'm actually just scrapbooking with products that I had pulled out of my stash specifically for this layout. So in doing that, I had went through my LA Studio box and pulled out some supplies in there that I thought would work with this layout. Now, I pulled out way too many, as you obviously can see. I could make the whole background die cuts and still probably have some left. But it gave me a good variety to kind of sift through and try out. And I'm a person who likes to kind of sift and rifle through a pile of products to see if I can find the perfect thing to fit. And I was having a difficult time because I have a cluster up by where that heart is by the end of cherry, the Y in cherry. And I wanted to put something at the bottom left of the photo, but I didn't like the way that it lined directly below that heart and then that word strip that I have. And that word strip says love you, by the way. I didn't want it to be directly underneath that. So I'm moving it down here to the bottom left, and I have that gray heart with the little ticket that says happy moments. And then that circle up here to the top right that I'm gluing down says all my heart, and it has a little white heart on it. I like the variation of the different pinks throughout. I have that bright pink that's in the part of the title, and I also have the bright pink as the heart. And then I have some paler pinks as the photo mat, as well as the couple different die cuts. And I just spelled out Great Grandma with my little tile alphas. And the reason I put Great Grandma, she's my grandmother, but these albums are primarily for my son whenever he gets older, so he can see his family members that he may not remember, or, see family members as they're younger and just a different time than what he'll remember. And so for him, this is his great grandmother. So that's why I put Great Grandma. And it also brings in a little bit of black down here right under the photo. I pulled out my little recollection punched hearts. I just have a really small recollections punch that punches a really tiny, well, not really tiny, but a small heart. And I always use that on just some little scrapbook pieces of paper. Whenever I'm done with a kit, I will use the pattern paper and just punch little hearts out of it. It's kind of a nice thing to just have sitting around on your desk, and I use them a lot. I will never use up all of them because I have a ton of them, and I only use them 1 or 2 at a time, but I feel like it's nice to have just a variation of different colors. Now here are my little brads that I'm pulling out, and they're kind of in a slate gray, and I'm just going to scatter them about across the page, kind of like you would do enamel dots, and I'm putting them in little clusters of 3. I feel like it brings just a little bit more of a darker element to the page, and it also just brings a little bit of a different texture, because they're the metal brads, and they're not very raised. They're still very small. They're just like the size of small enamel dots. Have just a few more little bits that I want to do. I felt like the layout was a little bit simplistic because I did not have any journaling, and I don't have any journaling that I'm going to put on here because there's really nothing to say. It's just a picture of my grandmother standing in front of a tree with the cherry blossoms, and it's a really pretty picture. It's got the bright blue background at the top that you can see the sky. It's a sunny day. My grandmother's standing there holding her pink purse in front of the cherry blossoms, which are pink, and I just think it's really cute. So I felt like the cherry blossoms title was floating a bit, and I'm trying a couple different things to see what I want to put into there. I tried some of the ribbon. I'm going to try a few die cuts, and I'm going to end up settling on this little it's about a 4-inch strip that just says XOXOXO with a bunch of little hearts, and that is from the LA Studio cut apart sheet right here. Now I'm just going to trim it down slightly, which you won't see, but I'm just trimming it down so it's a little bit narrower, and then I'm going to put that right under here, and I am going to layer one more little label that has a word on it that says enjoy. And I will add one more label down here to the bottom right as well that says life. Now I'm going to trim off a little bit of the edge so it doesn't have quite so much of that bright pink, but it is going to have still the pink color. And it brings in the same elements that are already on the page, the same line. Most of the die cuts, actually I think every single one of the die cuts, yes, I'm pretty sure every single one of the die cuts that I used is actually from LA Studio. So it all has that same feel. It's the same product manufacturer, and so it fits really well together. Just going to glue that down, and I have another little gray heart that I had punched out, and that's going to layer right over the edge of that enjoy label. And the enjoy was not centered, and it was bothering me. I know that's like OCD of me, but the enjoy, with it not being centered in the middle of the label, I needed to add something to the side to cover up that blank spot, and I felt like the little gray heart was perfect because it just kind of matched with the rest of it. Now I'm finding one more little label here that says life, and I'll trim down some of that bright the pale pink off the edge, but it just brings it down here to the bottom right. I have a little bit of a brighter pink heart, and then just that lighter pink kind of offsets that. And that completes this layout. I hope you guys have enjoyed. I hope you have found some inspiration in this layout, and also that you'll try the prompt of something old and see what you can create as well. All right, thank you so much, and I will chat with you guys later. Bye.